Hi, good morning, everybody, and whatever time of day on our rotating, revolving Earth it is for you in relative time. I hope you can hear me, because I cannot hear myself. It usually tells me, it's working okay, Brett? It usually tells me the broadcast is beginning, but now I get complete silence. Well, I'd like to welcome you. This is our 17th webinar on Seeds of the Infinite, and as I wrote to those of you who are on this list, I realized that we've been in the territory of neologisms and all kinds of invented concepts to try to understand the origin of the universe from a certain angle, of course. You know, it's kind of from a philosophical angle that we've been trying to understand this. And but I'd like now to perhaps get back into the experiences themselves, because in the last analysis, that is what really counts. If we can change our consciousness or allow the conditions of the higher worlds to penetrate into our normal, relatively soul-infused consciousness, then we will be achieving what we are supposed to achieve. Every day the veil has to be lifted somewhat, until it does not descend anymore. Sometimes this is called, I've mentioned it before, the blinking of the dragon's eye. The blinking of the dragon's eye. And maybe one day, for lesser dragons of wisdom, such as we intend to become, the eye will remain wide open and will not blink. And so the veiled quality of our perception will no longer exist, and we will see, at least relative to what we have been seeing, we will see an unveiled reality. I mean, the Tibetan goes very far with all this. He tells us that all is illusion, O dweller in the shadows. And I just wonder how far he goes with that word, all. We're also told in a more relative sense that illusion, I will say as we know it, does not lift until the ninth initiation, when how can we talk of these things? But when we have refused further contact with the cosmic physical plane. Of course, the solar angels, the ones that are supervising our development at this time, have managed to travel on the cosmic astral plane. I suppose they reached a point where temporarily they had refused contact with the cosmic physical plane and were off on their journey on the way of higher evolution to be trained as solar angels in the star, or in relation to the system of Sirius. However, we are very grateful that they decided to return, and they have fallen. Interesting about the word fall. There are two falls. They've fallen onto the cosmic physical plane and into the higher ethers, where their focus is during our solar system, and then they've fallen again into the dense physical body of the solar logos. So even our soul realm, what we aspire to achieve, and where we aspire to focus in an ongoing way, even that is considered the realm of the fall. The causal body is still in the realm of the fall. So even if we were to be able to focus our consciousness within what we normally call the soul, we're still in the dense physical body of the solar logos and, deeply veiled in illusion. Well, we hope that a little bit of our work will help us to lift the veil and see more truly and understand the Maya from the larger sense in which we are immersed. Okay, I think tonight, or my morning here, will be a little bit shorter. Tuya and I have been presenting these ASK broadcasts, and you, if you have not had a chance to attend, we are working on the United Nations Climate Change Conference every morning for a while, maybe until the 10th or 11th, when it finishes. And then every evening we've been attempting to invoke the soul of particular nations. So in your chat box you will see the link for that broadcast. And if you'd like to join us, I think it's worthwhile. It is a mode of service that we can perform because we have learned something about meditation, and obviously when we do this in a group way, it is very helpful. I think on the inner side of things, about 100 people per program have been coming, something like that. So it's a goodly body of meditators, and through our power of visualization and invocation and working with the Christ and his hierarchy, I think we can help to influence the world consciousness in a positive manner. So maybe you'll be able to join us for some of these broadcasts. Okay, friends. Now, as I say, I'm going to try to be work a little more simply today. Maybe a little bit more of the how-to about it. The book I'm working on at the present time is a book of seed thoughts. I haven't quite organized them entirely yet, and I say to my friends, how will we organize these things? And they come back and they say, well, ... That's what it amounts to. So we'll figure out how to get them organized somehow. But I thought I would just look at some simple seed thoughts and give us a bit more time in contemplation to help these ideas, these realizations, sink into the consciousness. You do have to take that quiet time with some of these very subtle issues that they're so obvious, but yet they're so subtle. And the transformation of consciousness proceeds slowly. There might be those occasional moments of great awakening, the intuitive aha moments. One of the great Buddhist scholars saw a fly, and he was awakened. Suddenly the veils dropped. You never know what it's going to be from any angle. I mean, reality is staring us in the face all the time. You never know what will be the trigger to causing the veils to drop, and then for the discovery of what the poet Wordsworth called something far more deeply interfused. I love that word, interfused. We're working on soul infusion, and I've come to think that, of course, we are the interfusion that we are searching for. the quest ends and we discover that we are actually what we've been looking for. So anyway, I sometimes call this philosophy infinitistic philosophy, or radical infinitism, which means going to the root and discovering that all things are absolutely infinite, or are the absolute infinity. And we will then work on a few seed thoughts. But first, maybe a little bit of discussion in relation to them. Yeah, I see you all here, and I'm just looking at those of you who have managed to persist. I still persist. It's a great mantram of the first ray, that you look out upon a world destroyed, as it says, and then the voice comes through you, I still persist. And that is a great truth. Nothing can get rid of the you that you really are. There's no place for it to go. You are, even in this cyclic universe, you are an absolute permanency, permanence. And I guess we have to get used to that idea that even though the scene may change, and it always does, that which we are is permanent in an apparently impermanent presentation to consciousness. Well, the first seed thought, I just have so many. I've got about 10,000 seed thoughts in this book so far, so it's a little bit hard to choose. But this first seed thought is identify as anything or anyone that you see, or perhaps maybe I can call this, or register. Identify as. We've already discussed the difference between identifying with, which implies a kind of initial duality. There is something that you apparently register, and then there's you. And of course that's an illusion, right? So we identify as, and then there's only one thing left. There's not a you and an it. There's only what it is. So identify as anything or anyone that you see or register. So how can this be done? And maybe we can discuss this as we go along, because this can be a discussion. We want to know a little bit of the how-to. Now, the how-to is maybe different for every emanation of the One, such as we are. Working out your own how-to is what we call, in other words, building the antakarana. Everyone builds it for himself or herself, and it's a unique process. And given your many, many lives of unfoldment on this particular planet, a mere drop in the bucket in a way, but okay, it's just millions of years, you have evolved your own method for seeing reality, or at least all of us are on track to use a particular internal, unique method of seeing reality. So I'm just sharing, what I think works for me sometimes, and you can see whether it is useful to you. So I always try to align with the 4 levels of heart that we have discussed. Of course, the chain of heart centers just continues and continues. It's not that we can cut that off at the monad, not at all. As I did explain, but some things maybe are worth repeating. We've seen how, when we look at this map, that the heart centers are on the second ether. Here, you see, so it's not like all of our chakras are found on the same level. There are different vibratory levels and constructions, atomic constructions, even to the normal etheric body. And the heart center, there it is, HT, you see, and here on the emotional plane, the heart center is there on the second ether. So that when we go to the monadic plane, it is the second cosmic ether. And so whatever is going on the monadic plane within ourselves as the monadic being is in some kind of heart center. It's a great cosmic etheric heart center of what being, you see. So is it the planetary logos? Is it in a way an aspect of the solar logos? It's certainly something far beyond the normal human heart center. So my point is that the series of heart centers continues to ascend. The monad itself is in a cosmic etheric heart center. And then we would have to go, to the solar logoic heart, and we'd have to rise into still greater heart centers all the way up or in, however we want to talk about that. But anyway, for our purposes, we have the 4 heart centers, the heart, the 12 within the vehicle, the 12 within the head, the 12 upon the plane of soul endeavor, and the 3 whose number is a 12, that's these 3, respond to the greater 12, which I am presuming to be the monad, considered as a heart center and having therefore some access to the heart of our whole system, which is the solar logos and the solar logoic heart, and on we go, So I always find that if I meet the contents of consciousness with my mind first, I may miss something. I may miss the immediate experience of the reality. So lately it's been occurring to me that one should consider something called heart first. This is not necessarily sentimental, or the idea that you meet reality with your solar plexus, which we often do, unfortunately, but this is not what is meant. It's more the straight knowledge that Master Morya talks about. It's more the immediacy of the intuition. And I probably should not have left out the Buddhic plane, because that's really along the line to straight knowledge and intuition. And maybe I should put another heart center in here and call it the Buddhic heart center, because it is, in a sense, deeply connected with the heart. It is the Buddhic vehicle, in a way, is the heart center of the spiritual triad, because the 3 aspects, 3 major chakras are represented there in the triad, in a way, the head, the heart, and the throat center. So anyway, I try to meet things first with the heart. It's kind of a how-to. With the heart alignment first, and of course that means that you have to be in your heart alignment. Let's just try that for a moment. It's through the power of visualization at first, and you may find certain veils just melting away as you begin to do that, because the heart has eyes, as it were. The heart sees, and in occultism we're sometimes told to see through the eyes of the heart. So that oftentimes means the soul, because in a way the soul nature is the heart center of the monad, but then the monad seems to be its own kind of heart center, even though from another point of view it's the head center. So anyway, meet it with the heart, and that prevents immediate discrimination. Now, our concretizing minds, we're always separating this from that. This is different from that. Everywhere you look, everywhere you respond, you have a variety of impressions, and we do have to, as disciples, exercise discrimination so we can tell the difference between things and how they are to be approached and used in our normal life circumstance. But the kind of perception or realization we're looking for is just the opposite of that, in a way. It is non-discriminative. So if we immediately meet reality, or whatever is presented to us, with the sense of this is different from that, we're going to fail to appreciate the unity which underlies all things, and even more than the unity, what I have been calling the identicality. So hearts can reveal quality, yes, and we have to, as soul-infused beings, always detect the quality of the things we encounter and whether they are of the soul or somehow way out of the archetype, yes, but hearts can also reveal being. Hearts can reveal being. There is a sense in which the life aspect, which is akin to the being aspect, life and being in a way to me are inseparable, the life is anchored in the heart. It's not just love, it's life anchored in the heart. So in a way the monad is anchored in the heart. It's the life aspect. It keeps us going in form. It keeps us anchored. So it's the revelation of being which we are attempting to achieve. I mean, something so in your face all the time, as it were, that you say, well, why do we even have to think about it? But like I say, it's so obvious that it's inobvious. That's the thing. You're being presented with the raw fact of being all the time, and we don't realize it. So the heart will reveal that. So as we are looking, in this question of identifying as anything or anyone that we see or register, we have to go through a certain process until it becomes completely automatic. Now, I think one of these processes is cast out all previous notions of yourself, or previous, let's just see, maybe I should say ordinary notions of yourself. What you think you are is getting in the way of what you really are. And sometimes I use that formulation of words, really as really, because whatever is happening to us here in the universe, I'm going to say something outrageous now, okay, has already happened forever and will happen forever in the ultimate reality. But just to make it simple, let us throw out our usual notions of what we are. I'm a human being. I live on planet Earth. I have risen from the animal kingdom and am now passing through the human kingdom on my way to the kingdom of souls and higher kingdoms. I'm a tiny this, I'm a tiny that, my name is this, I live here and that. All the different ways that we perceive ourselves in an ordinary sense, we really temporarily have to get rid of them. Now, I'm not trying to be impractical here. I am saying that, look, these ordinary notions are what we live by. And we will completely lose our grounding if we get rid of them permanently. I'm remembering something, Krishnamurti was a great teacher, and according to those books called the Initiate books, 3 of them, the initiate in the new world, the initiate in the dark cycle. He was passing through the fourth initiation. And and one of the masters, he wasn't exactly leading people to the masters. He was just saying, hey, count on yourself, rely upon yourself. And of course that's true, but in a way we're also supposed to be led to the masters because they can offer us certain insights which can really facilitate our path. So Krishnamurti was accused, if I can use that word, of speaking to people as if they were the monad. He talks to them as if they were the monad. Well, they are, of course. But do we realize that we are that monad, and what would that realization really be? Because I don't think it's at all what we think it is. Okay? But maybe I'm maybe I'm talking to all of us as if we are the monad too, so maybe I can be accused, But I think for a few minutes a day, or a week, or whatever, it's important to think of our identity as the monad and try to fathom what that might really mean. So we have to get rid of the old notions of the self. And if we're going to say, I am anything I see, I am anyone I see. And when I use the word see, it's just a generic term for consciousness. So I think that's a real important how-to when entering this kind of seed thought. It's so built into us. Just think, when you're hungry, you say, I am hungry. And the states of the body, I am upset, I am happy, I am, all of these statements refer to conditions of our vehicles with which we have somehow mistakenly identified. Because there is an imprisoning identification, and then there is a liberating type of identification, and that's the one we're talking about. So when I say I am you, I am this, I am that, I certainly have to get rid of my common notion of my I, my I-ness. That has to go, because I'm not looking at this form or my astral condition or my mental activities and saying that those are this or that. I'm relating to a much deeper level of beingness when I say that. So I cast out my normal sense of identifications with lesser things. Another thing in this how-to business is do not be misled by the appearance of anything or anybody. Now, in a way, we're living constantly in the world of appearances. Don't be misled by that. It is, what you are seeing is the precipitated quality of internal configurations of energy. You're seeing the precipitated quality of internal configurations of energy. You're not seeing the reality of it. Although sometimes when things get subtler, we say, oh, that's more real. Well, it is more real, but it's not the real. So, things on the inner planes are maybe more real or closer to the source than things on the outer planes, but they're not the ultimate reality we're looking for. So when I look at something, I immediately get engaged with it. Oh, look at that, and this is how it's configured, or this person is so interesting or not interesting, or attractive or not attractive. I get caught into the form I see. But maybe if we walk around with our heart open to being, I think I'll put that down, okay? May our hearts be open to being. If you walk around with a heart or a series of hearts open to being, maybe we will not immediately get caught into the appearance of things. As Master D.K. told us, it's life, quality, appearance. Esoteric Psychology 1, those are the three great factors drummed into our thoughts: life, quality, appearance. We're looking for the life. And then, of course, for our encouragement, he says something like this: do you know what life is? And then something like, I think not. Maybe none of us knows what life really is, but we're on the trail there, and life and being, at least for me, are equated. So, don't be misled by the appearance of anything or anybody. Appearance reveals quality, but you are seeking being, which you forever are. Forever are. You're seeking what you are, forever are. You are seeking what you forever are. And, it can be in this universe or that universe, this planet, this galaxy, that galaxy. It doesn't make any difference. Form makes no difference. Well, form is always difference, but it makes no difference to the pursuit of that which you always are. So in a way, when you're working with this kind of seed thought, as you identify with anybody and anything, in the deeper sense of identification, you dismiss distinction for a while. You can't get on in the world without the sense of distinction. Otherwise, you're just useless, hopeless, helpless. But for a moment, you dismiss distinction and find the factor of sameness. Let's just call it sameness. Sometimes I get into these word forms, sameness as sameness. Let's just say that whatever happens in the universe has pre-happened forever and will within the supernoumenal world, within the world of the absolute. Now, let's just have a little fun here, and we'll take things two at a time and realize them to be the same as same. So the object here, kind of a Libra thing in relation to being, is equalize everything two at a time. Equalize everything two at a time, even though these two may seem, from the form perspective, to be completely unrelated. We're not so much talking about relationship, we're talking about identicality of related or unrelated things. So I have a little phrase: equalize as being. Equalize as being, EAB. Equalize as being any two things, remembering that the magnitude of the things makes no difference. In terms of, so now, some really strange things, and you'll get a chance to do your two at a time too. So let's just get into a little attitude of meditation here, and I have this preposterous first suggestion that we take any two things. We visualize, let's say, a flea, tiny little animal, and a solar logos. So there ought to be a fair amount of relative difference between these two. So hold in your consciousness this sort of ridiculous contrast between a tiny little flea and the great solar god. And we're not approaching this with our mind so much. It's with these open heart centers. The old mystics used to say, even a flea in God is worth more than things of apparently great value that are not in God. And look with your hearts, for the dimension of sameness, shared being. Equalize in being the flea and the great logos. Find that something which is not form of any kind. But that common denominator, so to speak, which is common to both, the life and beingness of both, is identical irrespective of form. In school we were taught to compare and contrast. However, in this mode of approach, all things compared are identical in essence. You'll know when you find it because something just locks in. And you say, aha, okay, I'm now registering the great commonality, regardless of form. Let's try another one. We can work on our flea on our own here. The next one would be, let's visualize a flame and its apparent opposite, a drop of water. The fire devas, the water devas are apparently at odds with each other from a certain perspective. But as we visualize the flame, very different from the drop of water apparently, can your hearts tune in on the beingness of both? Can we equalize these two as being, equalize as being? Master DK has told us that all things are expressions of the one infinite being. And not only are they expressions of the one infinite being, they necessarily are the one infinite being, however disguised, veiled they may appear to be. So basically, this is not the horizontal, this is not the vertical arm of the cross. The vertical arm of the cross is hierarchical. The horizontal arm of the cross deals with that which all emanations of the One share. Beingness. So, we go through life letting our hearts, I never want to just isolate it there because there's that whole line of heart centers. We let our hearts uncover, discover, reveal, realize the beingness, the shared beingness of whatever may be a content in our consciousness. So, we don't abandon the hierarchical path, of course not. We use that all the time in our progression, apparent evolution, our, what I call it, emanative retraction, going, being reabsorbed into the One, as Master DK says. But you have to go through many processes. But at the same time, the equality of all things in beingness or being. I always used to puzzle the old statement about the enlightened ones, how they could look in every direction and see the same. Maybe I was 20 years old or less, and how's that possible? Why does that mean enlightenment? But more and more, I understand that the enlightened ones are looking through the dimension, or non-dimension, of being, and that's why everything is the same. Everything is the same in being. Equalize in being, equalize as being. Whatever words or mantras trigger this for you. And then if we equalize as being, we will find ourselves in the presence. The old Jesuit idea to practice the presence of God. Much older than them, of course. Let's see. Maybe, I've got a couple here, but maybe, well, I'll spare you this one. An atom and a galaxy. Huge magnitudinal differences. An atom, maybe there are some ways of now photographing an atom in some respect. I've seen things that claim to be the photographs or representation of atoms, but, the magnitude is tremendous. But magnitude makes no difference to shared being. So, why don't you just choose your own, just for a moment here. Any two things, any two states, any two, a pair of something that you want to equalize as being. It can be what's presented to the senses, or any of the senses, or in the world of thought or emotion, or wherever. Just choose. Maybe it's easiest sometimes to choose two objects of some kind and equalize them in being your own. Or two people, any two from anywhere. Beingness is always the same. It is supra-qualitative. It can be a pebble on the ground or your favorite person. The beingness is identical. So then turn yourself loose on this seed thought for a moment, with these things in mind. Identify as anything or anyone you register. You see or register. Identification considered as the ultimate degree of intimacy. It's a different way of life, and there's no more other. The other is gone. I'm going to jump around a little bit. In our colloquial language, we sometimes hear people using a phrase, the be-all and the end-all. They say, well, it's not the be-all and end-all. But there's a huge piece of ontological advice there. Be all and end all. Now, what do we mean? If you go through life being all, you have ended the particularity of the items in the allness. You have ended distinction. You have ended the hold which the illusion of separation usually has over our consciousness. You can work with be all. It's a great exercise. You can work with end all. You can work with be all and end all. To walk through a day of life being all. What an experience. We may have to lift the veils repeatedly, they tend to fall. Try again. I've sometimes said, nothing escapes your being it. Nothing escapes. Not just being of it, but actually being it. And I would suppose a certain, in Vedanta, they call it the non-dual life, or in Buddhism, the non-duality, the non-otherness descends or takes over your consciousness or is realized for what it is. And then there's just a new way of being in the world. Or in whatever world we happen to be in. So, I'm kind of changing things around in my mind as I go here, trying to give us time, time to really ponder these things. I'm actually going to, instead of going on to the next thing, I'm going to give us a chance to share anything we might like to at this point. Life is absolutely permanent. This is the very opposite of what we say, life is so fragile, life is impermanent, but what is meant by life? It's meant by, in that case, the vitality which engages with form and locks your consciousness into a ring pass, not a form. That is impermanent. But what life is permanent. Let the group know that life is one and naught can ever take or touch that life. That's from Rule 6 in the Rays and Initiations, the Advanced Rules. Now these simple things, we actually have to know these simple things. They really are simple, of one piece, as it were. We engage in too much complexity at our peril if we forget the really simple things. As the Tibetan has said, simplicity governs the way into Shambhala, in which the monad is resident and in which being is realized. Simplicity governs the way into Shambhala. So, if there are any thoughts that you have here, anything you might like to say or ask, whether you use your voice or whether you want to write them down, and Brett can remind me here, we can speak or write at this point if you would like. Glad, you know, there are 28 of us in the attendee group, and that's the number of Capricorn. Madame Blavatsky says there are 28 stars in Capricorn. It's also the number of the Om. If you add up the numerology of the Om, it's the I think it is. Let's see, the 16 and the 12. See the M. Which letter is the M? The O is 16 and L, M is 13, 14. I hope I'm not off on that. Anyway, I did manage to get the Om to a 1, but that's a digression. Anybody like to say anything? Okay. Right. Please go ahead, Stephen.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Stephen. Yes. You go ahead. Yeah, you're on. You're on, Stephen. I can hear you. At least I did for a minute there. Oh, are you there? Well, I know you're there. We're always... just can't get rid of ourselves. That's the problem. Try in many ways. Maybe something happened with your computer, but I heard you there for just a moment.
And now?
Now I got you. Now I got you. Good.
Okay, Michael.
Yeah.
Yes, Michael, you made a comment about the heart center, and you made a phrase, the eyes seeing through the heart.
Yeah.
Now, that struck an association I wanted to share, and this is concerning the Vajrayana Tibetan tradition from Padmasambhava. And there's a particular channel called the Hollow Crystal Kati channel, a specific channel that rises from the heart and surprisingly goes up through the spine and circles around the occipital lobe and then bifurcates and exits out both of the eyes.
Ah.
And one of the traditions of the Vajrayana meditation, of meditating with the eyes open, is that this keeps the hollow crystal Kati channel open to make the connectiveness of the love connection between the self and the external other along that horizontal plane in the ascendancy of the hierarchical.
Very
And I
interesting.
wanted to,
Mm.
it's very interesting because I
Mm.
wanted to share that because you were making some very significant correlations between the individual heart chakra center of the individual up
Mm.
into the monadic position.
Mm. Very interesting, Stephen. And I'm liking the way you're using the fifth ray to describe this process. Um, in the arcane school work, it was interesting. Madame Blavatsky, no, excuse me, Alice Bailey was a friend of Madame Rurik. At least for a time they were friends. I think they were even in the same building on 42nd Street, Agni Yoga and the Tibetans' work. And when Alice Bailey started offering, expanding her program, she took two Agni Yoga principles, and one lesson study is called the doctrine of the eye, and then she added to it the doctrine of the heart. So these were, references and studies from Agni Yoga which dealt with the relationship between the two. Now, the doctrine of the eye was considered more dualistic and less unitive and less occult than the doctrine of the heart. But obviously, as you are emphasizing here, she saw that they needed to be related. So these technicalities that you're talking about, they underlie the kind of thing that happens in our consciousness. We are
Well, and
going.
they,
Yeah, go ahead.
well, I was going to say they actually are significant details within the tradition of the ageless wisdom that
Mm,
are often overlooked because a lot of this literature just hasn't been translated. And now these translations are coming out, and there are multiple references where it can be cross-correlated.
that's wonderful. That's wonderful. And some people here, like yourself, and there's some others in the group, are learned in Buddhism. So this will be an important kind of, as you say, cross correlation with the kind of things the Tibetan has given us. Look, there's a reason for it all. Something works, and underneath it, there is the reason why it works. And people who have that investigative mentality will get into these things. So I appreciate, Stephen, your thoughts there and how they are related. Basically, in practical terms, not technical terms, but practical terms, we have to fuse all apparent dualities that the eye reveals, or the eyes, into the unity which the eye of the heart reveals. And of course, the eye of the heart can be considered also the third eye and the eye of the soul. So there's this whole doctrine of eyes, which is very technical and also underlies the expansion of our consciousness. So I appreciate that very much. And if you have the source, I would appreciate receiving that, a little bit of the detail of it. I would appreciate
Yes,
that.
yes, I do. I have multiple links. I'll consolidate them and then send them forward.
Love
Okay?
it. Love it. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Stephen.
All
Thank you.
right.
Okay. Appreciate it. Um, Anybody else would like to offer a thought uh, or a comment or a question? We're in an area here where the mind often does not go, or at least when we're in these areas of identification, we might think of the mind as a impediment or something that blocks the appreciation of the state which we are looking for. The so-called slayer of the real. But of course, the Tibetan tells us that the mind is also the revealer of the real. We remove the veil in many ways, and we can use the mind to remove the veil of that aspect of Maya which blinds our unitive sight. So, everything can be used. Everything. It's not a question of this is good, that is bad. It can all be used to produce the realization of the fusion and identicality which is. Okay. Okay. Well, there's just maybe one more thing I'd like to do, and maybe have a little chance to discuss this lightly. I have another seed thought here. By the way, do you remember our seed thoughts from last time? I'm going to just remind us of it because I kind of like them. Okay, seed thoughts from Soti number 16. There is here, and then is now. We'll get back into those, but this is how we collapse time and space. Just a little triggers for the collapsing of time and space. And if we're ever to pass through the needle's eye, about which the Tibetan speaks, and relating it to the fourth initiation, we have to collapse. With the schedule we've been keeping, collapse is near. But let's just say we have to collapse extension in time and extension in space. If we can collapse those, then we are at the point of true identification with being, or as being. So extension, the illusion of extended time and extended objects in space are simply categories of consciousness, as Immanuel Kant was telling us, constructs of consciousness. So that, those were last week's seed thoughts, and I kind of like them because they're simple and you can practice with them. You can go to any there, to the most remote place, and feel the here-ness of there. You are there, there is here. You can, at first you don't feel it, or grok it, or intuit it, and then clicks. Maybe it accompanies a vibration in the heart, or a heart. There it is. So, wherever there is, it's here. And whatever time we're dealing with, and that, I always find that harder, frankly, but maybe it's just how I'm built, but any then, the then of the future, or the then of the past, is now. Now and then. Now and then. See, we have to bring together now and then. Okay, just a couple more things. I'm not going to hold you too long here. The next one is to find and be the presence. These are all variations on one great identificatory theme. I call it the presence as presence, but you know why I do that. It has to do with the way the supra-noumenal state descends into the universal state. Everything in universe was and is supranoumenal first, meaning in the post-pralaic realm. Post-pralaic. No more universe. That's what I call the supranoumenal realm. So find and be the presence. Or presence is presence. Find and be the presence. So, the method, in line with the heart, of course, and realize that, the presence is never absent. Maybe when you were a kid, there was a roll call, and you wanted to find out who was in school and not. So you raise your hand and say present or here or whatever, and the ones who didn't were absent. But the presence is never absent. You can't get rid of the presence. It's like trying to throw things away. Where is away when you throw things away? There is no away. So it's always permanent and continuous as long as there is a universe, and that's with just the capital P, and then the other presence, the greater presence, and there's no one to whom it can be present in a way, is the absoluteness itself. So it's this presence as presence, the presence in the universe, let's just stick to that, is the permanent interfusion of all perceptions by being, let's just call it. Beingness as being. There's nothing but perceptions, there's nothing but contents of consciousness. Everything is a content of consciousness. Well, you might ask, whose consciousness? It's not necessarily a content of our consciousness, the way we are presently limited, but it is a content of consciousness, of a greater consciousness. To be is to be perceived. So this is this presence in universe is the permanent interfusion of all contents of consciousness by being. Being interfuses everything and is everything. And this presence, which we are, is this interfusion. So we can, easily say, I interfuse all. So, in a way, it's having the feeling. I use that word. Doesn't mean emotion necessarily. It's a sensitivity of an all-extended I, which paradoxically simply exists at a dimensionless point. The all-extended I at a dimensionless point. So the presence is always present, and we are that presence, and it's the hearts that reveal the same. The presence is always the same. Now, within the presence there are, what can I call it? Points of intensity. Points of relative intensity within the presence in universe. There's just one presence, and there are degrees to which you can realize its intensity. At different points of tension, we realize either more or less intensely the nature of the presence. In other words, I'm saying I, as a temporary human being, am going to get a glimmer of the presence, and I'm assuming that my glimmer, or even my more permanent registration of the presence, is like weak compared to the planetary logoic registration of that same presence, and on and on. So there is something called, I want to call it this, intensification of the realization of the presence. I'm just assuming that whatever we call being or presence or the interfusion gets more and more intense depending upon the mechanism of registration. In other words, I can't call it an end when humanity realizes it. It's only the universal logos and its self-realization of the presence which it is, which I would call ultimate in any universe. And if I can go beyond that, I would say that that is infinitely removed from the presence which is as that. I know it's just language, but let's just say that in our universe everything is relative. We're looking for the non-relative, and the presence is the non-relative, but there are intensities of that presence which are realized differently by different types of consciousness. It all depends on how far down the emanative stream we may be. The further we reascend along the emanative stream, the more intense the realization of the presence. So I've said that the points of varying tension within the presence, and that is hierarchy, another way of describing hierarchy. Points of varying tension within the presence. But these points in universe are still nothing but the presence itself. So, every once in a while, in relative time, one is still, one is receptive, one is not preoccupied with a bunch of thoughts or feelings, and something is there, or something is here. You detect something. It's everywhere. Everywhere. And then, of course, the next step is to realize that you are that presence. And like DK says, if you're harmless, you are everywhere. He throws in things, you just read over them. If they don't jump out as a hint to you, you may read over them for years. And then you realize, my goodness, he said it all along. How can a man be what he is and be everywhere? Or no, how can a man or a woman be what they think they are and be everywhere? So he's telling us that we're not what we think we are. So just let's pause for a moment and just see if we can be quietly aware of a presence. Now, of course, that's something that needs to be practiced, and it's called in the mystical disciplines the practicing of the presence of God, but not as a dualism. It's a practicing the presence of the self, of the interfusion, of being, of that something far more deeply interfused. See, it's not so much out and in, it's high and low, or in and out. Excuse me. It's not so much up and down, it's in and out. If we're in our darkened room, thus spoke the mixer as he stood within his darkened chamber, if we're in the darkened chamber of consciousness, relatively speaking, we're in the out, and we're not in the in. And we don't want the presence to be an absence. We don't, it's often said you have to lose yourself to find yourself. But sometimes you have to find yourself to lose yourself. It all depends how we define these things. We always want to not only be in the presence, the continuity of the presence, we want to be the presence we're in. And of course, the form, the brain, as we use it now, it constricts these realizations. It binds them with rings past knot, which hold the consciousness in a very limited focus. But we want to, maybe using the power of Neptune, slip through those binding rings past knot into the presence which we are and which we have always been. And that's certainly a redefinition of the self, isn't it? It's not the self as we normally think of the self when we define all of our particularities. It's a self that all share and are. So find the presence and be the presence. And then, I suppose, we could say that everything becomes alive. When we're out of the presence, only apparently, myopically, out of the presence, there's a certain deadness to perceptions. It almost looks inanimate, without soul. The more we are in the presence as the presence, the more everything is alive, thrilling, living. So it's a different way of going through life, If you're ever overcome by emotion or confused in your mind and feel bad in your body or fatigued or whatever, where is the presence at that moment? And you'll probably find you're not engaged with the presence at all. That your identification as the presence has been obscured by the lesser foci, the lesser points of attention. So we want to walk in the presence, as the presence, and let all contents of consciousness and their perception be transformed by the realization that they are all emanations of the presence. It's a simple idea. Are we present? Are we present? Or are we absent? Apparently absent. Absent from reality. Or present as reality. So these are thoughts you can, carry with you, and use them as you live the dual life of being preoccupied with all the various particularities, and yet you are not of the illusion of particularity. You may be in it, but you're not of it. And we walk in the presence, as the presence, even while engaged in and with the particular. Particle, particular. Are there particles? Only emanatively, not really. Okay, friends, is there anything that you might like to offer or say with respect to that seed thought and the approach to it? Just those few concepts, being, presence, identification. Not only being absorbed into the whole, as DK says is necessary for identification, but to be the whole into which you are absorbed. And still, in all that, not losing your particularized focus, which is necessitated forever in the Mahamaya, whenever there is a Mahamaya. It's really a dual life, which is only led by those who are non-dual. We're going to run into paradoxes all the way, and it's just because of our language and the way our brain works. And some people say, well, you can't think about these things because your equipment is so inadequate that you can have no idea of what reality is as you would appreciate it when you're out of the body. And I say, but wait a second, we're bringing heaven to earth here. We are bringing the higher realizations into matter, into the brain consciousness, and we have to use what we've got. If we have a mind, if we have a heart, we use it and develop its abilities so that you can go up and down the ladder of consciousness any way you want, without having to say, okay, later when I'm dead, I'll know that. You could put off realization forever that way. We want to realize here and now, in this world of many veils, this world of dense illusion and fragmentation, exactly what we know as a monad. That's what we want to be able to do. So use what you have. We will make mistakes along the way, but the more we use it, the more we exercise it, the better faculty it will become, and it will translate monadic realization right into the here and now of our present illusion. Any thoughts, friends? I realized, or maybe my wife helped me realize, that I was getting a little too complex about certain things. And, all this language, one needs the immediate realization, continuity of realization. I don't think it's the full atmic thing, the way it's found on the fifth subplane of the atmic plane, but it's a reflection of that continuity of realization. That's the important thing. You might not have any words for it. It doesn't make any difference. If we live in it as it, then that's it. That's what we're looking for. The one, what are we looking for? We're looking for the one who's doing the looking. This is a kind of a St. Francis idea, but of course it's very old. We're looking for the observer as it ever recesses into infinity. And sometimes transcending consciousness, we just have to be. It's a platitude, of course. Well, you have to be, and people don't know what they're talking about, but beyond knowing about something, beyond loving something, we have to be that something. And as I said, some time ago, to love you is great, okay? We all want that. But to be you is more than to love you. Of course, I find that if I get into the being of whatever it is, I also love it. Very simple things. Being, loving, knowing. Very simple. But we have to have that substratum reliably present in order to go through life and handle all the particularities according to the plan and purpose of the higher points of tension. Well, okay, I guess we have our Ask coming up. Our Ask webinar, or rather broadcast, starts in just an hour. And what I'll continue to do, I want to give us the more experiential approach. So as we talk, we can meditate. We can go into the experience of these things. I'll try to pull out various seed thoughts which emphasize maybe different angles. It's all the same thing, of course, I'm just saying the same thing in 1,000 different ways. Thou art that. And then finally, just silence. You can't even open your mouth, It's just being. But I'll pull out various seed thoughts from my book or from whatever occurs to me. Remember, there is here and then is now. And we'll keep going until we just deepen our realization, deepen it, until we emerge as something that we don't usually think we are, while still being our illusory, existing as our illusory something. We won't leave our normal identity because we have to use it, but in addition, we will be the identity we really are. And I think that's very worthwhile. So let's, if there's nothing else right now, we will close with the great invocation. I just have to find it. Have you ever said the great invocation, and all of a sudden you don't know where you are and you're on the wrong verse or something like that? The great invocation is so built in, but it happens. So here is the great invocation, and we will all do that together, and we will get this we'll get this video out to you, the link to it. They can all be found on Makara. And I don't know, Brett, if you have the link handy where they can be found, you can just throw it in the chat box or sometime. I don't have it handy right now. And you can find these programs if you've missed some, or but really they're all the same, 1,000 different words to say the same thing, which is one realization. That's what we have to achieve. Here is complexity. It's overwhelming. And here is simplicity. It's overwhelming. And we have to bring the incredibly complex and the utterly simple right together. That's what we have to do. Okay. Great invocation. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Okay, friends, be all, end all, practice the presence, identify with anything and everything. And we'll see you before long. I think the next time is the 12th. Next week, Christmas is coming up and it's going to get busy, but we'll see whether we can all continue to meet or then maybe take a little break as necessary. So I'm just kind of opening you up here if you want to say goodbye, and you can, Brett, start from the bottom, and I'll go from the top here. I hear you. I hear you. Okay. I hear all kinds of things. All kinds of things. Thank you, everybody. Appreciation. Hey, And as they say, appreciation for your presence. Okay? Appreciation for your presence. Bye-bye, and thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
See you,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
We're all disappearing, right? We're all becoming
See you at
absent.
the meditation.
Okay. Farewell. Farewell. Ciao. See you next week in one form or another. Okay.
In 45 minutes.
Oh, that's right. 45 minutes. 45 minutes. Okay. Okay. 45 minutes. See you soon.
5 minutes.
Bye-bye.
Oh my God.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.